Greetings and welcome to the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. In each episode, host Kirill Tokarev invites video game industry leaders to talk about the world of game development. No topic is off limits as long as it relates to video game development. New episodes are in the works, so remember to follow us or subscribe and share with someone you know will also enjoy the podcast.
Hello and welcome to 80 Level Roundtable, where we discuss the latest tech and news from the game industry and 3D industries. And today we have with us Gleb and Stanislav, who are going to talk about new tech in the animation industry. So Gleb and Slava, could you please do a little intro for those people who don't really know you and tell a little bit about your background and how did you start working in this new field?
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Slava. So basically I was doing animation like in early 2000 something. Then I switched to managing advertising projects for agencies like BBDO, DDB, and others. Then I got tired of clients' feedbacks and switched to more fundamental stuff like machine learning, deep learning, which brought me to for some reason gaming industry, gaming company, which was trying to utilize some machine learning for gamers. So I was leading a B2B department there, and recently, like last half a year, I started to endeavor my own adventure with the bringing machine learning for CG and animation in particular worlds. That's the story.
Hello, my name is Gleb. I'm coming from more research background. I've graduated with a physics degree from Moscow State University. I've spent some time doing research in physics, and I was generally interested in mathematics, physics, and all stuff like that. After graduating, I found out about machine learning and deep learning, namely. I got pretty excited about that. I started studying it by myself and combining the previous knowledge of math with programming and computer science. For the last couple of years, I was doing pretty extensive research in deep learning, mainly focused on images and 3D rendering and all stuff like that. We've met with Slava sometime before and decided to try and combine our knowledge and passion in CG, and namely in the animation pipeline. So I guess here we are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Gleb, that probably studying physics in Moscow State University is pretty hard because it seems to me like this is like the hardest thing that you can pick to study. And maybe maths is probably worse. But because I have a lot of friends who kind of studied there, and they all have told these not horror stories, but they're just telling that it's like a super challenging place to study, but also a very good place.
It's like the brain trains your brain and all that stuff.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So we have a lot of people talking about machine learning today, and I think a lot of them are kind of make these concepts of AI and machine learning very similar, right? But those are different things, right? So could you give us like a little understanding on how are these things actually different, right? Because if you're doing machine learning in animation, it doesn't mean that it's going to take control over your PC and then start, destroying your neighbors and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. I guess I can give a brief overview. There is obviously some misunderstanding between these two terms because they are being used throughout maybe last decade in the same context, but they are a bit different. As you mentioned, AI is basically some metaphysical area, I don't know how to say that properly, but it's a word describing how to make a human-like intelligence with our hands. It doesn't make any restrictions on the way you do it. In 50s, for example, there was a lot of work in 50s, 60s, 70s, throughout second part of 20th century, on how to make rule-based AI, like logic-based AI, when you write down a lot of rules for the entire world, like trying to fit all the decisions that you can make into a huge decision tree or something like that. Recent machine learning is a way to learn these kind of like rules from the data that you have. because one day people understood, as far as as I can imagine, that there is actually a lot of data already in the world, and you can try to learn the rules from the data itself, because data is basically some observations from the world you want to mimic. And deep learning is a subfield of machine learning, which deals with neural network, and neural networks are like only a small part of machine learning. But neural networks became really efficient throughout maybe last 15 years or something, 10 maybe. So they are like dominating the AI field right now, but it's not the only possible instrument. There was a lot of attempts before, and maybe there would be a lot of attempts after neural networks, because they have their limitations.
Why is there such a huge interest in this field right now, especially in video game industry? So why are everybody who's doing content, especially, so obsessed with like machine learning and neural networks?
Yeah, I think I can tackle that. Well, the promise of machine learning, not AI, is basically, as Gleb mentioned, you can learn rules and you can learn math model to actually save you, to encapsulate knowledge of human data within a math model. So you can, go for playing this model and not, actually doing it with your own hands. So meaning that it will save you a lot of time on working for your game.
So, Slava, just to kind of give a better direction. So the work in video games and just like in animation, I think in general, it's very, I wouldn't say like inefficient, but it requires a lot of actual work, right? So as you mentioned in one of your interviews with keyframes, it's like, it's very tedious work where you do like a bunch of frames, like each after each, and so on, so on, so on, right? And how can AI kind of help with that? Like, where does it come from and what can it fix, right? Because I think in many regards, people are tired of doing all this manual work, all this, like, moving like there is a GIF where you move the toilet like from one direction to the other, right? Nobody likes doing that. But at the same time, people are afraid that it might take their jobs away, right? So where does machine learning come in this kind of dilemma? And do you think it's going to take jobs, or do you think it's just going to take away all the unnecessary tasks that you can kind of not work with?
Yeah, I strongly personally believe that AI is gonna, eliminate boring part of the job, and will actually, help creatives in kind of manual and boring things, which will allow them to free up time for more creative stuff and less doing boring stuff. So yeah, I strongly believe in that. Gleb, do you want to elaborate on that?
I think I can just add maybe a little example on how AI can affect animation and computer graphic by watching at the previous examples of how AI helped in more creative professions. I would like to take a look at the Photoshop, for example, as video editing, as image editing tool. So imagine that you want to select a person and maybe cut it out from an image. You can do it manually. You can take the lasso tool and like set a lot of points, then remove the image, then copy paste something to the background, so it would look plausible and all that stuff, and it will take a lot of your time, and it's not actually very creative. It's really a boring job to just do one thing over and over, and you know how it should look like, but there is like a huge work required to take an image there. And machine learning actually helps you with that. Now in Photoshop, you can just with one click select a person. With another click, you can remove this person and place a background where this person were. So you don't spend hours on removing some parts of an image. It's just maybe a matter of clicks. But all the creative decisions, all the conceptual decisions, the way you use this tool, it's all up to you as an artist. And I guess no one can take that from you. And that's actually what in my opinion, the artist's main skill is to make proper decisions, and this will stay obviously in the field. This would be needed.
Yeah, I think it's a great example actually with Photoshop, right? Because it seems like the number of users of the software just keeps growing. It's not, decreasing because the AI is kind of like helps you cut off the background
just
faster.
opens in new ways, because you don't have to spend a lot of efforts on small tasks, and you can actually do more massive projects, more massive work by yourself with lower, let's say, headcount. And it actually opens a lot of new opportunities, because if you have just one person working on a project, you can do more quality stuff. And if you have a lot of people, you can push even further. If you have 30 people, but no one have to spend a lot of time on some simple tasks, they all can do something that was never done before, because they have more time, because they have more power, more energy, and all that.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Slava, maybe you can help me. So we talked about like a little bit in general on how AI is used and how like machine learning is being used in industry, but what is the way it's currently used in animation in particular? Like what are like the main areas where it's been, because I know like one big thing that changed animation a lot, like in the past, was probably motion capture. When we got motion capture, that there was like a huge leap in the quality of animation instantaneously everywhere. Like in the beginning of the bigger projects, but then almost like any studio could afford like a mocap tool or something like that. So what's going on now, and how does kind of machine learning and other like technologies like that, how are they disrupting the way that we think of animation?
Yeah, before going into specifics, I'd like to add up that these kind of solutions, like in a Photoshop example, they also lower entry barrier, right? Just because
totally agree.
You have that huge, enormous barrier for newcomers to actually enjoy working, because they got to learn a lot of stuff to actually achieve something, plausible and convincing and impressive. And with the help of technologies like machine learning, deep learning, as a subfield, you can just, push a button and then you have it. So we strongly believe that machine learning is not about eliminating jobs. It's about, actually allowing people to express themselves better and solve tasks more efficiently. So speaking of motion capture, so the way we see it is it's still not that available for a lot of parts of the world, mainly on the cost issues, and because you gotta either rent a motion capture studio where you pay them basically thousands of dollars for shooting for a number of days. Then you gotta clean it up. Then you gotta work with that, try to retarget that for your own characters, see it in engine, and all this iteration stuff. In terms of machine learning, we've been investing heavily in our own researches and trying to come up with the solution which would allow any user to basically shoot whatever video they want to have and see its mockup data right from it. So and
so tell us a little bit more about like the solution that you are currently working on. So what are like the main unique things about it, I'm guessing, right? And how do you think it's going to change the way that people are working with animation right now?
Yeah, basically the solution is it's currently like an ad hoc basis from initial pilots we are doing now with some studios. So it works like this. So they shoot a number of videos where an actor is performing stuff. They shoot it with their regular cameras, like an iPhone or some other manufacturers smartphones, and then they put this video to our software, and our software returns them 3D key points. So in currently in the Blender format, but we are also was talking with our pilots companies, and we asked them if they want to see it right within in engine, and they were like completely blown away with this idea, because that would totally save them time for iterations, because they could see it right within in engine, so they could experiment more, and with the lowest barrier possible. So they don't have to go for motion capture studio to plan everything in advance. They still have to plan, because at the end of the day, it's just a tool. So it's a matter of what you do with it. But yeah, in general, I think that's a good example of how machine learning is basically democratizes motion capture.
I actually have a question, not entirely related maybe to the kind of work that you're doing, but it's still interesting. So we've seen a lot of examples recently of like new ways that animation could be done in games, and I think like Ubisoft is doing a lot of research in that area, where they actually also have a guy from like Belarus or Russia, I don't remember his name. He's doing like some very cool research where basically the AI agent just doing stuff himself, like going around and so on. At the same time, we have companies like Naughty Dog who are, I guess, using something in the middle there, where like in the recent Last of Us, they have very cool animations, very fluid, where one action goes into another and you don't actually see the way the animations connect, because they have some kind of like algorithm and a huge database of the recorded movements. And then they can kind of glue everything together where it all feels like that the person is just moving in this world, switching shoulders when she's near some kind of cover, or, going through some, fights and so on and so forth. So I'm wondering, do you think that like AI and machine learning is going in animation, like is it going to go outside of just the idea of capturing and kind of analyzing some kind of like material that you get from a visual, like a camera or something? Is it going to match like keyframes more nicely? Is it going to match different animations inside the game, right? Do you think there is like potential for growth there as well?
Yeah, I think I will try to answer that from a more like a business perspective, and that Gleb would add up some technical issues. Part of the answer. Huge companies, they are not into democratization of software. They are more into solving their own needs, right? So if we look at what Ubisoft guys are doing, they try to optimize their own costs. For some number of years, they were saying that for all public talks they had, that they want to go for optimizing this state machine, because they can obviously shoot whatever amount of mockup they need with their own studios or with their partners. But the problem for them is that games are game development is iterative process, right? So whenever director comes in and say, hey guys, let's change this part, like say our walking should be damage dependent.
Yeah, I think it happens more often than most people want it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but that's how to say, that's
like the nature,
perspective.
the nature of
exactly.
this business, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and then the director comes in and say, hey guys, let's our walking be damage dependent. And you can imagine it will take like weeks to reshoot all the mockup data to enable that small feature for dozens of characters, hundreds of NPCs, whatever they're aiming for in their next title. So they're trying to utilize machine learning to save those costs, and basically they want to program a machine learning model to tweak animations on the go and kind of blend between them in a more programmatic way compared to more human way. In terms of Naughty Dog, I think I saw an interview with one of their animators. I don't really recall the name, but anyway, and the guy was saying that the amount of mock-up work they were doing is just staggering. It's enormous, and I don't really know if they were using any machine learning, but I guess they did. Yeah, and I think machine learning, there will be eventually a product which would allow, go from state-based machine to more fluid kind of thing, where a Uber model, like a huge model of which consists of all of the possible animations in the world, which would be tagged, easy controllable, tunable. That's because that's really important aspect of all of animations work. That kind of model in some product would eventually, allow people to work with animations more easily. But I don't see it's coming in I don't know, 5 years or something. There are some efforts still worth mentioning by some engines. They are kind of trying to do that, but what we see, we are kind of years from production ready, fully production ready solution. And I'd like Gleb to add up on technical and research part of that question.
Yeah, I think Slava actually described use cases pretty well. I can just add maybe some technicalities. So as Slava mentioned, there might be two basic setups. One where you have a lot of motion capture data and you want to tweak it a little, and another one when you don't have actually motion capture data at all. And these might be two bit different scenarios, but what Ubisoft is doing and what other guys are doing is basically might be called a programmatic or procedural approach to animation, where you have some prior knowledge of physics of your model, of how humans work maybe, and you want to basically synthesize new motions that were not presented in the mockup data that you have, probably, or if you don't have any mockup data for your exact model, then you want something that is reasonable. There are a lot of approaches for that. I think the one that got into production, as far as I know, is motion matching, and it was used in the game For Honor, as far as I know. It's like when you take the animations that corresponds to the current movement of the character from the mockup base. There might be a couple of matches, for example, 3 matches, and they are not like exact matches, and you want to blend them in some clever way to get a new animation. It works robustly, but you need a lot of animation data. You need a lot of you don't have that much of a control, because basically the nature of animations that you will get depends on the mockup data that you blend. The work by Ubisoft, there was recent work by Ubisoft that reduces the memory footprint of this motion matching process and reduces the burden of carrying all the motion data to the client and to do it on the client machine and all that stuff. There are also some works that trains a neural network like in complete in a way that it synthesizes motions for the model that you have without any explicit control, except for the motions should be physical, that just, for example, your model should not fall on the ground, and you want to train a network to do movements that do not lead to falling down. It also lacks explicit control. So there are problems with how do you control this deep neural network model trained on data in a way that would be tractable by the artist, actually. And it's a huge problem in the deep learning in general, this tractability problem. So yeah, there is a lot of research going on. There are a lot of interesting use cases, but they are really far from a tool that an unprepared artist can use. It's more of an academic research, and what Ubisoft is doing, it's really exciting. For example, Ubisoft or Naughty Dog or some other studios, but it's like more, yeah, it's more academic. So we'll need to spend some time on productization of
So, thanks, Gleb. I think that's a very interesting point, and I was very interested to learn more about like the motion matching tech that's going on there. And I really like Slava's comments on the kind of like the idea that the companies just want to make stuff faster and cheaper. So that makes sense, like, totally right. And the whole idea of like the engines that we have right now and libraries of like scanned objects and procedural tools as well, they're basically all serving the same function. They're just making stuff faster and cheaper. And my question though is, do you guys have any understanding, like maybe in the percentage kind of idea? So how faster can you do some kind of like animation task if you're using your software, right? So let's say I need to like rig a character, I need to make him like walk, where I need to prepare like a number of different dance animations for a Fortnite character. So how much time would I need to spend if I just hired an animator? And how much time can how fast can I do it like with when I have like a software like yours, which is like AI powered and stuff?
Sure. I think that's a numbers question, so I'll try to answer that. I think I will use an example from one of our pilot projects. So basically, the team is making a horror game with roughly dozens of unique characters and some number of cutscenes. So the choice for them was either go for keyframing, which they had doubts about scalability in terms of can they actually, achieve that in a efficient, money efficient perspective, or they could, try to find some other solutions like suits or some experimental stuff. So when we when we talked to them, their request was like they want to experiment a lot in terms of actual motion they want to achieve in in within the solution. So for character animation, they had like basic states like idle, attack, walk, etc. So they had like 17 something characters, 14 states each. So for keyframing, they would spend roughly like 4 or 5 hours, well, less, or like let's say 4 hours for each state. So 70 hours for one character state, and 1,200 hours for 17 for all characters, all states, to get the pre-final character animation. So with a cost of $20 per hour, like an average for the rest of the world, for keyframing, that would take them roughly $24,000 and some number of months of work for all characters. And with our solution, they got most of the movements and most of the states in a matter of a month plus something, and the cost is below. I wouldn't go into particular amount now, but say a one-digit $1,000. So basically, you compare like $24,000 and one-digit $1,000.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say that it's like more than 50%, right? So you're saving
Yeah, absolutely.
a lot in cost, but I think it's even more important that you're saving a lot in time as well, because it feels to me that in current climate and as you know, like games are getting bigger and bigger and more ambitious, and if you look at like the Last of Us that I keep mentioning, it's that there was like 2,000 people working on it if you count all the outsourcers, like all those guys, right? So that's huge. That's like, so it's like two companies like Riot, like the stacked together just to build one game. So that's, and and that's all because of the time. So they just hire more people to kind of tackle the tasks that they have, so they could ship the game at an appropriate time frame. And if you have a software that actually solves that problem, it's much better than hiring people, because there's always a human factor involved, and you kind of want to be sure that it's going to be done by. I mean, as a project manager, you probably know this better than I do, right? So you want to make sure that everything's going to be done in the exactly right time, and when you have an army of like 2,000 people working, then it's probably not the case, right? But with this kind of software and cutting down the time by 50%, and then also decreasing the price, I think that's an incredible offer that any company would take advantage of, it seems to me. So guys, I think we're
absolutely.
We're almost near like the end, and I kind of have one question, which is like more for like the inner futurist like inside of you. So how do you think the workflow in our industry is going to change in the 5, maybe 10 years? So what tools are kind of going to go away, and what like tools or techniques are going to be in demand? Because our audience is young, and they're like developing, they want to learn more. So it would make sense for them to learn something that's going to be important in the future, and not to waste time on something that's probably is going to go away. So what's your take on it? I know it's subjective. You don't have to be like, there's no burden of responsibility behind your shoulders, right? So we just want to like learn what's your opinion, like what's going to happen.
Gleb, do you want to try to answer that?
Yeah, but it would be more from more technical perspective, I guess.
I'll
but
try to add up.
Yeah, okay. So I guess that as we've seen the Photoshop, as we've discussed about the animation and lots of other fields, a lot of small, boring, repetitive, routine work will be automated in one way or another. Either it would be some fancy deep learning, or maybe more clever, simple solutions. And it's better to understand at least briefly what's going on. Like, for example, why 5 years ago you have to keyframe every frame that you have in the video, and like now you have to keyframe once per second, for example, if it would be the thing in the production lately, in order to just understand how the technology behaves and what can you expect from that. I'd say that it's better to understand the basics of engines that you are working in. For example, if it's Unreal Engine, then you should understand at least something about cameras, about basic physics of how collision works and stuff like that. Maybe you should learn a little of programming, but at least to do some scripting, some proper maybe C++ or Python or something, to just be able to automate some stuff that I guess it will be there in 5 years, and maybe more and more will be automatable. And the more you will be able to automate, the easier the work will be for you. Then, just as always, I guess you need to like keep your eyes open. You need to watch out for interesting projects, interesting references, interesting scenarios, and all stuff like that. Just to spend more time on creative side of education.
Yeah, I think I would elaborate on the creative part. I think back to the roots is kind of what back to the roots approach is kind of what benefits you most. If you want to build great work, great game, great animation, you got to learn what's behind it. I mean, behind that, it's about emotions, right? And no tech can actually synthesize that. It can help you to get what you want, but it's up to you to decide which emotion you want to encapsulate in that particular moment with that particular form. So I would go for this fundamental stuff and learn, arts, learn how to be, more creative with your own mind and not with tools you have at your disposals, because at the end of the day, they're all tools.
I mean, I can't agree with you more. So you were saying about that thing, and I remember that iconic video when there was like this poor Japanese guy who came to hire Miyazaki, and he showed him a recording of some automated animation. I mean, it was just like a experiment, right? It wasn't supposed to be something. And it looked horrible. And Miyazaki said that was. I mean, it was. I don't remember like the exact words, but it basically abused life itself. It said something like this, right? Because to me, I think animation is one of those interesting professions that are very close to something that God would do, right? Because it's basically putting life into something that was still. And I think that's why it's so interesting. And people are, even though like animators are not getting paid a lot of money, even though it's like a very tedious work and it's challenging and so on and so forth, people are still going into animation because they just want to see the character move. They want to bring some life into it. So, and it's nice to hear from you guys that it's still all about the tool, right? So having all that amazing stuff at your at your disposal, it will just make your life easier, and you can do more creative work. You can bring more characters to life and just build more projects. I think it's a very optimistic end to our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, there will be links.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. And there will be links to all of your like publications and your interview with 80 Level if you want to go more into details. And so you can check it out, and we'll add some more links so you can go ahead and maybe send you a message or something if they're interested to do like a pilot or whatever. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. That was a great honor to be in your podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.